What is going on, you guys? This is the Cubone here, and as you can clearly see, I am wearing teal and black like a Duval cat. That must mean I'm here to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars. Ladies and gentlemen, it has finally happened. The NFL draft has concluded, and ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, I got the big whiteboard all set up. I got all the draft picks laid out. I'm ready to talk about the Jacksonville Jaguars draft. So let's go ahead and look at the board. So as you can see, I have it all set up. We have the round, the selection itself, the position they played, the school they're from, and the team, and the name of said player, as well as I got some notable free agents. At the end of the video, I'll give you guys my overall draft grade. But the first thing I want to start off with is the team needs. So I didn't get a chance to make a video about this. I wanted to make a video about what the team needs should have been for the Jaguars going into the draft. I didn't get a chance to do it, unfortunately. But nonetheless, I'm going to run through these real quick. I got edge rusher. Reason being is because Jacksonville's been really bad at getting to the quarterback over the last 2 years. K'Lavon Chaisson has been a very big disappointment for the Jaguars. First round pick 2 years ago in 2020. Hasn't lived up to being that number one overall selection. So I think edge rusher was something they had to address, as well as the offensive line. Brandon Linder had retired. There's a hole at the left guard position. They got the tackle situation, I think, figured out, and they got the right guard situation figured out, but nonetheless, some interior offensive linemen definitely was a position of need for me. Linebacker was the next position I had written down. Last year, linebacker was a huge Achilles heel, if you will, for the defense, in my opinion. And they brought in Foye Oluokun, but they still needed, in my opinion, another linebacker to pair with him, so that was a position of need. Wide receiver, look, you can't have enough weapons on this offense. This offense had the worst point differential, one of the lowest scoring offenses that the Jaguars have put out on the field in franchise history. So definitely wide receiver was something to address. And then the running back position was the last one I had written down. You look at Travis Etienne, he's recovering from an injury. James Robinson recovering from an injury. The other two running backs that you had on the roster last year that saw significant time are no longer on the roster. So some depth was something that I would like to see them address with the running back position. So now that we got through all those team needs, let's go ahead and look at whom they selected. And I will throw up some stats that they had in the previous season so you can get an idea of what their production was last year at college. So let's go ahead and get this started. In the first round, with the number one overall pick, the Jacksonville Jaguars selected edge rusher out of Georgia, Trayvon Walker. There was a lot of debate on who they were going to pick. Was it going to be Aiden Hutchinson? Was it going to be Walker? Was it going to be one of the offensive tackles? They went with Trayvon Walker, and wasn't too excited for the pick at first. Granted, once we got the rest of the draft done and I looked at the draft overall, that's when I really liked this selection of Trayvon Walker. He brings a lot of versatility to this defensive line. They lined him up at Georgia, out on the edge, in the 3 technique, standing up at a 2-point stance. They had him drop back into coverage. They had him do a whole bunch of different things at Georgia. Sort of like I guess you can call it like a Diet Coke version of Micah Parsons, if you will. But I don't know if he's going to end up being as good as Micah Parsons. That we really don't know until they hit the field. But I like it. They addressed one of the needs, so I'm going to cross that out. Yeah. And with that, they addressed the need. Time will tell how well he is at getting to the quarterback, but I think right out of the gate, he's going to be really good at stopping the run, which is something that's very important within the AFC South when you got guys like Derrick Henry and Jonathan Taylor that you got to face twice a year. Next draft selection in the first round, 27th overall, by way of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the Jacksonville Jaguars select linebacker out of Utah, Devin Lloyd. This is something I really wanted Jacksonville to do. I wanted them to be aggressive in the first round. They had 12 selections going into the draft. As you can see, they only had 7 by the end of the draft. But they packaged some of their picks, went back into the first round, and they took a big-time playmaker on defense with Devin Lloyd out of Utah. This is a guy, once again, I'm going to put the stats that he had last season up on the screen. There's so many to go through. He was just dominant at Utah. He was just a playmaker. And that's something that they needed on defense. This defense last year didn't turn the football over a lot. They didn't have a lot of playmakers on this defense last year. Not enough anyway. So I love the move. I love the move to trade up to get a playmaking linebacker. That's one of the needs. Let me cross that out. Oh, hold on. There we go. There's the marker. Finally cooperating. So, linebacker, addressed. You know, Devin Lloyd, just like Trayvon Walker, brings a lot of versatility. Can blitz, drop back into coverage. Really good at stopping the run. Very instinctive. Love the move. He's going to be a plug-in play player for this defense. I'm excited to see how they utilize Devin Lloyd and Trayvon Walker, as well as another defensive player that they drafted. I'll get to him in just a minute. Before I get to him, let's talk about the next selection. In the third round, 65th overall, the Jacksonville Jaguars selected center out of Kentucky, Luke Fortner. Really good selection here. Let me put up the stats right here on the screen for you. Luke Fortner played guard most of his career at Kentucky. This last season, they moved him to center. Actually made first team All-SEC at that position. And this gives a lot of flexibility on that offensive line now. They can probably have Tyler Shatley start at center with Luke Fortner at guard. And then they move him to center at some point in time. Or they just put in Luke Fortner right away at center. And then they have Ben Barch compete with Tyler Shatley at left guard. So, love the move. Absolutely love it. Great value in the third round. Let's cross out offensive line. That was a great selection by the Jaguars, in my opinion. Now we get to the next selection. This is where it kind of went, Trent Baalke, what are you doing? That's the first thing I said when they made this next selection. In the third round, 70th overall, by way of Carolina, the Jacksonville Jaguars selected linebacker out of Wyoming, Chad Muma. So, first of all, this is the selection. This draft pick was what we got in return for the trade for C.J. Henderson last year. So, like I said, when they made the selection, my first response was, what the hell are you doing, Trent? Because we already drafted a linebacker, so what the hell are we doing with drafting another linebacker? But it's hard to really, criticize the player. I mean, Chad Muma was similar to Devin Lloyd, just a playmaker. Stats on the screen right now. Just a playmaker at Wyoming. Multiple interceptions. Some went back for touchdowns. Over 100 tackles. He was a playmaker at Wyoming. You can't knock the player. But I would have liked to see them go on the offensive side again. As you can see, they went very defensive heavy within this draft. But again, it's hard to knock the player. Chad Muma is a very good linebacker, and I'm very interested to see how Mike Caldwell, the defensive coordinator, is going to utilize both Chad Muma and Devin Lloyd and Foye Oluokun all on the same field at the same time. That will be very interesting to see. So now we move on to the next selection in the fifth round, 154th overall by way of Minnesota. The Jacksonville Jaguars selected running back out of Ole Miss, Snoop Connor. So this selection, Jacksonville took a couple of their 6th-round picks. They had multiple 6th-round picks. They traded up to this selection, 154, and then they had 155, and they traded that pick to Tampa Bay to pick up a 4th-round pick next year. So, Snoop Conner, really good running back, more or less similar to James Robinson in a sense. He's more of a running back guy that's more power-based, even though I think he might be a little faster than James Robinson, just by a smidge, but it's always good to have another running back on the roster. Like I mentioned, what the team needs, let me cross out the running back, there was some injury concerns with Travis Etienne and James Robinson, and then there's also some death concerns after you get past those two guys. So it's always nice to have another running back on the roster, ready to go if need be. And, you know, put the stats up on the screen, bam, there you go. You know, he was productive at Ole Miss. You can't deny that. He had double-digit touchdowns, really good at, you know, at the goal line. That's probably where they're going to be utilizing him the most. So, really like the selection here. It's nice to see them at least get another offensive player out of this defensive-heavy draft class. Moving on now, we go to the 6th round, 197, by way of Philadelphia. The Jacksonville Jaguars select cornerback out of, I'm going to be honest, I'm going to butcher this name probably, Wichita Baptist, Gregory Jr. So, first player in this school's history to be drafted into the NFL, so that's very nice for him. More or less, Gregory Jr. and this next selection, I'm going to go ahead and give my thoughts on him as well. In the 7th round, at 222nd overall, the Jacksonville Jaguars selected cornerback out of Arkansas, Monteric Busta Brown. So I'm going to put up the stats for Gregory Jr. right now. Bam, there you are. And then now I'm going to put up the stats for Monteric Brown right now. Busta, bam, there you go. So, give you an idea of what to expect. I actually kind of like the selection of Busta Brown. I was kind of surprised that, you know, with those kind of stats, he slid all the way to the 7th round. But, you know, those, you know, players slide. It happens in the draft. So, I think these two guys right here, you know, Junior and Brown, they're going to be competing on special teams in the secondary, more likely for the 4th and 5th corner spot. I don't know if they're going to necessarily make the roster. I have a good sense that everyone from the 5th round up is going to probably make this roster. I'm not 100% certain how Junior and Brown are going to land on the roster, i.e. they could make it via special teams. That could be something that they that could land a role as a, you know, a gunner or a jammer. We'll wait and see. You know, when training camp and the preseason comes along, we'll get a more idea of what their role is going to be on this defense. But it's nice to have some more depth at the corner position. Although I would have liked, if they were going to draft some defensive backs, I would have liked to see them maybe address safety. But, you know, when you're drafting in the 6th and the 7th round, you're more or less drafting guys that are going to be on special teams. So, well, with that being said, that's all the draft selections that Jaguars did over this past weekend. Before I give you guys my overall draft grade, I want to go over some notable free agents that, undrafted free agents, that I noticed that Jacksonville had signed after the draft. We got Kevin Austin, the wide receiver, Lou Juan Winnigam, another wide receiver, Israel Antwine, defensive tackle, Garrett Prince, a tight end, Sean Mahoney, a safety, and then Andrew Mevis, a kicker. So those are just some guys that I'm going to keep my eye on personally through training camp and through the preseason, see how well they, you know, how well they play and can they make the roster. So overall, what is my overall thoughts on this draft? Well, my grade for this draft is... Oh, the marker's not really working for me. Let's try it again. Yeah, there we go. It's a B. So, reason being is, overall, I think the players that they drafted are really good players, but it's hard to not notice the fact that, you know, this offense last year was so anemic. It was so terrible. And this draft, they didn't really address too many of the needs on the offense. As you can see, I still have wide receiver not crossed out. Now, there's still a chance, after the draft, in a little bit, maybe a DK Metcalf becomes available or Deebo Samuel becomes available. You just never know. You really don't. So maybe they'll make a trade for one of those guys, and then that will cross out that need at the wide receiver position. But they also, you got to keep in mind, they did sign Christian Kirk. They signed Zay Jones. They did bring in Evan Ingram at tight end, who's going to play more of a off-the-line wide receiver slot guy kind of role for the team. So they have at least addressed this, but I still felt like it was a need that they needed to address in the draft. But also, you got to factor in the first round, from picks like 8 through 19, there was a huge run on wide receivers. And then in the second round, there was another big run on wide receivers after that. So there was probably guys that they wanted to draft at wide receiver, but they were just not available, and the board fell a certain way that, they just took guys like Chad Muma because, hey, he's a great player. He's sitting in our lap. Let's might as well take him. So overall, that's my thoughts on the Jacksonville Jaguars 2022 draft. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section down below. Don't forget to leave a comment, like, subscribe, share the video, and of course, everyone, thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.